The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Sean Yao. Prices of siling labuyo have ballooned to as much as 600 pesos per kilo because of the rainy season. Consumers are also expecting prices of other vegetables to shoot up after the onslaught of Jolina. Shyla Francisco with the story.
Bicol Express, pagi, inihaw na liempo, kalderetang itik. These are just some of the dishes best enjoyed with siling labuyo. But some consumers might feel the heat just by looking at prices alone. Siling labuyo prices have soared to around 600 pesos per kilo this week, more than double from the previous one. For consumers, this is another level of burden.
Mahal talaga, kailangan din kasi sa pagkain eh. Yun ang hinahanap din ng customer minsan. Kasi yun daw ang pangpasarap.
Sana mas bumaba pa.
Para ano po?
Para hindi masyadong mahal yung gastusin. Lalo na ngayon kasi pandemic.
The Agriculture Department explains that sili prices usually shoot up during the rainy season.
Base sa ating historical data, lagi po tumataas ang sili sa ganitong mga panahon. Hindi po ito ang time ng harvest ng sili, pero kung pinipili klima ang sili.
On the flip side, prices of other vegetables have gone down this week. But retailers believe that this won't last long, especially after the onslaught of Jolina and the possible effects of Typhoon Kiko.
Talaga pong pansamantala lang po talaga yan, ma'am. Kasi lalo na may parating na naman pong bagyo. Magtataas na naman po siguro. Malamang bago next week pa po, mas mataas pa po.
Based on the latest report by the DA, agriculture damage and losses from Jolina have amounted to 270 million pesos. Rice crops were the most hit, followed by high-value crops and corn. Around 11,500 farmers and 8,000 hectares of land in various areas in Calabarzon, Bicol region, and western and eastern Visayas were most affected. The DA is planning to source vegetables from Cagayan Valley and Central Luzon to counter the anticipated price hikes next week. Shyla Francisco, we are One News.
Right, still on weather-related news, we have Typhoon Kiko moving closer towards northern Luzon. Pag-asa last spotted its center some 190 kilometers east of Tuguegarao City in Cagayan. Kiko is forecast to pass over the coastal waters of northeastern Cagayan between this afternoon or evening. But the possibility of a landfall over that area is not being ruled out. For now, signal number 3 is still up in some parts of Cagayan, Babuyan Islands, and Batanes. Heavy to intense, with at times torrential rains, are likely to occur today all the way until Saturday evening. The rest of Batanes, Babuyan Islands, and the eastern portions of Cagayan are now under signal number 2. Same goes for parts of Isabela and Apayao. Meanwhile, signal number 1 is still up over at least 8 other areas in Luzon, which are now being flashed on your screens. Authorities in Cauayan, Isabela are now bracing for the impact of Typhoon Kiko. We have our correspondent, Romel Lopez, reporting to us live from on the ground to give us the latest. Romel, is Typhoon Kiko already bringing rains there in Cauayan City as early as now?
Sean, Typhoon Kiko can now be felt here in Isabela. Rescuers are on standby for residents who need to be evacuated. Despite this, distribution of modules to students continues. Cauayan City DRRMO already prepared the rescue equipment in anticipation of the impact of Typhoon Kiko. Rescue boats are now on standby while rescue tools were already inspected. Cauayan City DRRMO Chief Ronaldo Biloria said that although the eye of the typhoon is far from Isabela, they are bracing for heavy rains that may result in floodings in some areas. Half of the 65 barangays in the city are flood prone, which is why they are already preparing for rescuing residents in these areas. Meanwhile, farmers also fear that their corn crops may be affected by Typhoon Kiko. they can do nothing but hope that the floods will not be that severe, as they still have to recover from Ulysses that destroyed thousands of acres of their crops. Despite the threat of Typhoon Kiko, parents in Kawayan City still rush to receive modules of their children for distance learning. One parent said that they will make sure that the modules will stay dry during the typhoon. John, authorities are expecting continuous rainfall until tomorrow, noting that they will be on standby to ensure everyone's safety during the onslaught of Typhoon Kiko. Sean?
Thank you so much for giving us that update, and stay safe out there in Isabela. That was News 5's Romel Lopez. Thank you, Roms. We're going to pause for a quick break, but we will be back with more stories after that. Keep it here. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Sean Yao. Incentivizing COVID-19 vaccination could be the key to going back to mask-free days a lot sooner. We have Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security senior scholar Jennifer Nuzzo to discuss that in this Bloomberg Quick Take.
How should we deal with this pandemic exhaustion?
Yeah, I mean, it is really exhausting, I have to say. Even, someone who lives in the data and sees every day why we remain concerned about it. It's exhausting, and people want to get back to living their lives. I completely understand that. I think we're getting closer. And the thing that we need to do, I say this every time I come on, but the thing we need to do to get closer to that end is to get vaccinated. There's still a lot of progress to be made on that front. We still have a lot of adults who are unprotected. We know that vaccinating adults protects kids.
Okay.
And then, there's still kids.
Jen, look, you're like one of the leaders in the nation on health security. What do we do to the unvaccinated? What is your policy prescription to provide incentives to the unvaccinated?
Well, I think the thing that's probably going to have the biggest impact is what's been going on. And businesses are rightly wanting to get back to business. They want to do so safely. They realize that their employees want to come back, their customers want to come back, and that the best way to make sure that happens safely and happens without further interruption is to require that their employees get vaccinated. Now that the vaccine is approved, at least we have one vaccine formally approved, I think it makes it easier for businesses to make that decision. And I think that's going to have a big impact in terms of vaccine uptake.
Dr. Nuzzo, John Ferro opened up this conversation talking about rents in New York City. It raises a question about the fate of big cities in an era where people are more concerned about variants of COVID that are never going to go away. Do you foresee a time when people will not be wearing masks and people will be operating the way that they did pre-2020 again in the next 5 years, or is that a pipe dream at this point?
Oh, I don't think it's a pipe dream. I mean, I very much foresee that. I mean, first of all, I think people are tired and they're not going to do it. And I think, we're getting closer to that point. I mean, one of the biggest things that vaccines do is they decouple the cases that we see from the deaths. And once we're no longer acutely worried about hospital systems being overwhelmed or people winding up severely ill or dying from this virus, I think the calculus of whether or not people need to wear masks changes.
And the health department has tallied over 17,900 new COVID-19 cases on Friday. This has brought the total caseload to 2,179,000, some 175,700 of which are still considered active. 168 more deaths were confirmed overnight, pushing the death toll to over 34,800. Total recoveries are now at 1,969,000, with 9,000 new survivors logged in the last 24 hours. 28.9% of the 76,500 people tested for today's COVID-19 bulletin were found to be positive. Let's now take a quick look at today's other top stories. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is once again calling on China to recognize the Philippines' victory in the 2016 Hague ruling. Blinken spoke with Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. on the 75th anniversary of U.S.-Philippine diplomatic relations. The two officials also discussed many issues, among them the COVID-19 pandemic, economic management, and human rights issues. Angelina left 14 people dead and 20 others injured after its onslaught in some parts of the Visayas and Mindanao on Wednesday. 7 fishermen are still missing. The tropical cyclone also resulted in around 286 million pesos worth of damage to crops and infrastructure. Jolina left the Philippine Area of Responsibility on Thursday night after making its 9th landfall in Mariveles, Bataan. In sports, 19-year-old Phil-Canadian athlete Leylah Fernandez beat world number 2 Irina Sabalenka in the semis of the 2021 U.S. Open Tennis Championships. Fernandez, who represents Canada but has Filipino and Ecuadorian roots, will be facing off with Britain's Emma Raducanu in her first career Grand Slam final. The teenager's U.S. Open run also saw her beating former champions Naomi Osaka and Angelique Kerber. For more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. Masks on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Sean Yao. We are One News.